We'll start the session by paying our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, who is founder Acharya of ISKCON. We'll also pay our obeisances to our spiritual masters, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj and His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. So we are currently studying chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, titled as Karma Yoga. So this chapter has total of 43 verses, and we have already covered the first section of this chapter. Basically, for the sake of convenience, we have divided this chapter into 5 sections, right? So last time we discussed why did Arjuna had those questions, that confusion, right? What should I do? Please tell me decisively, because I am confused by your equivocal statements. Whether I should fight or whether I should renounce, right? So we saw that. So we'll move on to the next slide. So we'll do a short recap of this first section, right? So the first verse was Arjuna's confusion, in which he asked, "O Janardhan, O Keshav, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think intelligence is better than fruitive work," right? So will anyone like to share, like, why did Arjun say that? What was the reason of Arjuna getting confused?
Because he was not sure whether fighting the war will give him peace, or he also thought that because in the previous session, right, previous section, he learned that peace, and that's where you get love, and peace is the way forward. And fighting a war was opposite to what he understood.
Right. Thanks, Dipesh. So you're absolutely correct in a sense that Krishna had earlier told him that how can you talk like this? You are a Kshatriya. How can you talk like Anarya? How can you run away from your responsibility? People will ridicule, right? Yeah, you will have infamy, and that you should fight, right? And thereafter, in verse number 49 of second chapter, Krishna said that why you want to engage in avaram karma. So you should not be engaged in avaram karma, right? And we saw in 39th chapter, he talked about buddhi yoga, right? And thereafter, he went on explaining that in 2.66 and thereafter, that how a sthit pragya can attain peace and happiness, right? So the self-realized soul should focus on Krishna, and with the help of transcendental intelligence and a steady mind, then he will attain peace and happiness, right? And he also ended the chapter by saying this, how that person, if he controls his mind and senses, will remain in peace, right? So Arjun somehow got confused. What does Krishna want me to do, right? And surprisingly, you will see Arjuna will continue to have the same confusion until the start of 5th chapter, because 5th chapter also starts with almost similar question, right? Therefore, if you see, the title of 3rd and the 5th chapter is Karma Yoga, right? And we'll see that while third chapter will superficially touch upon Nishkam Karma Yoga, we'll go in greater detail in fifth chapter, right? And as a reply to his question, to Arjuna's question, Krishna said that I've already explained you that there were two paths, right? Gyan Yoga or Sankhya Yoga, which Krishna explained from verses 2.11 to 2.30, right? In which basically Krishna said that we are not this body, and this body is anyway temporary. We keep changing it even now. So it will be like the same thing, right? After death, we'll change the body. While soul is unchangeable, it is eternal, it is unborn, right? It is permanent. So, what is why you are afraid? Why you are compassionate on something which anyway is not going to stay for long, right? So therein Krishna talked about Sankhya, analytical knowledge of relationship of body and soul. And then Krishna talked about the Karma Yoga, Nishkam Karma Yoga, or what Krishna has said, Buddhi Yoga, right? In which he said that how with that knowledge, with that Sankhya knowledge, Arjun should act, right? Act with detachment, right? Thinking, that he's just fighting for the sake of fighting, like it is his dharma. And we talked about how within Varna and ashram, we have to follow our dharma, our responsibilities, our duties, right? So we also discussed that how they are basically both interdependent, as philosophy and religion are, right? So before we move on to fourth verse, I just want to check if anyone has any question. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide then. Right. So Nishkam Karma Yoga is better for Arjun than Gyan Yoga. Now, although we saw in the yoga ladder, Gyan Yoga is higher in hierarchy, right? In comparison to Karma Yoga. But here, Krishna is going to explain that how this Nishkam Karma Yoga is more practical for Arjun. And he will, end up saying that actually a person should not renounce whimsically. So that is what today we are going to go through in these verses from verse number 4 to 9. And finally, in the 9th verse, Krishna will take us to, totally on a different platform. So we'll discuss that, right? So we saw that how Gyan and Karma Yoga are independent, and then they are rungs of the ladder with ultimate goal to achieve love for Krishna, right? And the philosophers who are sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in and like both of them, either of them. While it is very important for us to understand one thing, that while the Buddhi yogis, right, or Nishkam Karma yogis, they can achieve the goal very fast. The Gyan yogis take a lot of time. Bahunam jannam ante gyanvan prapatante. Vasudeva sarvati samahatma sudurlabha. It takes a lot of time, right? While for bhakti, it is like, end of this life. That we'll now why is that so? And why it is also, I explained that why does Prabhupada talk about Nishkam Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga interchangeably, right? Can someone explain that? Because that is important for us to understand. Why does Prabhupada, you might have seen that Prabhupada in his purports, in his explanations, use Bhakti Yoga instead of Nishkam Karma Yoga. So why does he do that? Like first question is, did you notice that? So like even in this verse, like 3.3, Krishna talked about that I already explained you the Gyan and the Karma. While Prabhupada, while translating, he said, speculative, philosophical speculation and devotional service, right? So philosophically, it is important for us to understand what does Niskam Karma means. See, Nishkam Karma. So it is Nishkam, but it is not Nishkarm, right? It is Nishkam, but it is not Nishkarm. Sorry. So the person or the devotee is performing a work, maybe attached to the work, right? This is what we talked about, Nishkam Karma Yoga, but he's not attached to the result of his work, right? He's a Nishkami, not attached to the result. So Krishna here is basically saying, or wants to say, which we will see clearly in the 9th verse today, and then in 3.30th, and then thereafter, through the course of Bhagavad Gita, that when Krishna is talking about Nishkam Karma Yoga, basically he will take Arjun to saying that you do this Nishkam Karma Yoga keeping me in center. He would not just say that, okay, Nishkam Karma Yoga, do it for, any absolute truth which may be impersonal or which is the Paramatma feature, but he will clearly say, do it for me. What the verse you all today recited, right? Yagnyat karmano anyatra. It clearly says that do your earth, do your karma for whom? For Vishnu, right? And if you don't do it, if you don't do the work for him, then you will be binded into the karma bandhana, right? So Krishna, when he's talking about Nishkam, he's actually talking about Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, right? So that thing is very important. So Prabhupada is not just translating it whimsically, that Karma Yoga is actually Bhakti Yoga. No, because Prabhupada knows the flow of Gita. Prabhupada knows what's going on in Krishna's mind, because Krishna is actually referring here to Nishkam, but it is actually Bhakti Yoga, right? Which Krishna clarifies himself in 3.9 and 3. Do your work keeping me in center. So that is actually devotional service. That is actually Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. So yeah, we can move on to the next slide. Okay. So, Nikita, will you like to speak on this? Like someone who can recite the words? Someone would like to recite the words? The Sanskrit.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
It is carry on.
It's okay, Ramya ji, you can go ahead.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Na
Krishna.
karmanam anarambha nice karyam yam purusho nite na cha sanyasanad eva siddhim samadhi gacchate.
Very good. Thank you.
And would you like to read the English translation as well?
Sure. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection.
Thank you. Okay, so in this shloka, we see the word karmanam. So karmanam is nothing but prescribed duties. and anarambhan means not performing, so non-performance. So what Krishna is saying in the first line is just by not performing your prescribed duties. Further on, he says in the second line, Naishkarmyam Purushosnite, so freedom from reaction. So in first two lines, he's trying to say here that just by not performing your prescribed duties, you will not be freed from the reactions. And then in the third line, Nacha Sanyasanad Eva, Siddhim Samadhi Gachati. And nor by just taking up renunciation or sannyasa, one can be freed from, one can attain, say, perfection or success or liberation, you can say. So overall, Krishna here, he's clearly stating that just by not performing activities or just by taking up sannyasa, no one can attain perfection or liberation. And we can see this, I think, clearly in this next slide. If we see, the first thing which comes to our mind when we see this is someone in the garb of a sadhu, but performing wrong actions. And why is this so? So this is, Krishna clearly says here, this is a premature renunciation. And why? Because if you take up renunciation, the key prerequisite for renunciation is to ensure to have a purified heart. So if we perform our prescribed duties, what is the outcome of that? The outcome is the heart gets purified. So here we see that, the renounced order of life here, we, some accepting that someone having an unpurified heart and as a result has a premature renunciation. And such people, we see that they are nothing but social disturbance. They cause social disturbance. So the renounced order of life, which is sannyasa, can only be accepted by one who is purified, in heart, by discharging their prescribed duties. And further on, we see that renunciation is not equal to Narayana. So some of the philosophers, they just have the mindset that if someone is taking up sannyasa or renunciates in life, they are as good as Narayana, which we know from our past classes and understanding that can never be the case. Not only when you take up sannyasa, but either ways, because we all are part and parcel of Krishna. So we can never be equal to Krishna. Rather, our role is, to serve Krishna as his servant. So Krishna thoroughly, clearly here, he condemns this principle of, just by taking up sannyasa, one becomes equal to Narayana. So such people are called as pretenders. There are many pretenders, such pretenders we find in today's world where they refuse to be in Krishna consciousness, but they definitely show up. They speak some dry philosophy, they meditate, but actually, because their heart is not purified and their mind is, their senses are still attracted to sense objects for their sense gratification, they're not pure by heart. And that's why these such pretenders, Prabhupada has mentioned in the purport that they are the greatest cheaters. And they are heavily, like we know, simply a disturbance to the social order. So overall, Krishna here, he's not advocating the renunciation to be taken without purification of heart. So the prerequisite, like I said, the first thing needed is purifying your heart by performing your prescribed duties. And only then, renunciation is needed. And also, one cannot just attain success abruptly if they directly switch to the last order of, ashrama. Like we know there are 4 ashramas, brahmachari, grahast, vanprasth, and sannyasa. So one can, so I think, so sannyasa or any purificatory process in that sense, it's mainly taken to help us reach the ultimate goal, which is Krishna's love and Krishna consciousness. So in 3.6 further, we can see, there is further description of how a pretender is, and we'll go further to that. Any questions on this so far?
Yeah, we can move on to the next slide.
Okay, can somebody tell me what do we see here in this picture?
Children enjoying, playing,
Yeah, playing within a
sack.
sack. Yeah, so it's a sack race. Yeah. So would somebody like to read this?
Yeah, I'll read it. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment.
Right. So we can see here that it's clearly mentioned that, action is very natural to us, right? So we see that here the sack is compared to our body, and the children, they are the soul. So our soul is trapped within this body, and in fact our body is acts like a burden to our soul. So the way the children are trying to run in this sack race, of course they can, their activity is limited, right? They are not free flow in this. And similarly, if we take out the sack from them, then we can see that they can perform it really naturally, and they can be faster and more active. So similarly, our soul is trapped within this body, and we there are quite a lot of people who say that, who have a mindset that once the soul, once we die, or the soul goes and merges to the Brahman or the Supreme, but that means it becomes inactive. But just like our activity is limited within the soul, and once it is freed from this sack, it can be, the body can be more active. So similarly, our soul, under these 3 modes of material nature, which is the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, once we are out of this body, our soul is more active, yeah, serving Krishna within the spiritual world. So same as our spiritual qualities or actions are being curtailed within this body, yeah, which is fully manifested when we spiritualize. And we also learned in prior classes that a body is just a waste if the soul moves out, which shows how active the soul is. Yeah, that is the most active component of the body, or rather the only active component. So so there, energy, I think energy and action, these are the intrinsic qualities of soul. Without this, these are the key things. Um, and action is very natural to us. So like Krishna says here, no matter in which ashrama you are, in each ashram, activity is the main. So we need to be active serving Krishna. So for similarly, Krishna never says, that we have to be inactive. Rather, we should, in fact, root all our activities and engage our senses into his service. So moving on to 3.6, where we just mentioned that it talks a bit more about pretender. Would somebody would like to read this?
Yeah, I'll read. One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender.
Right, like we said, Prabhupada has mentioned such pretenders as greatest cheaters. So one who, have the garb of a devotee, and we'll see this further in next slide. who restrains the senses, but their mind is completely, attached to the sense objects, and they work on sense gratification. So they are called as pretenders. And moving on to next, pretenders are called as mithyachar. So who have the externally, who have the garb of a devotee, and internally they have an impure heart, searching for objects or sense gratification. And we saw the picture, in the beginning. So there are 4 grades here. So grade 1 are the class of people where they externally they have the garb of devotee, and internally, they have a complete transformation of heart. So there are devotees who are like devotees not only externally with their outset, but their heart is also purely serving for Krishna. Then grade 2, they have externally the garb of devotees, and internally they do have a sincere attempt towards changing themselves. So like we are all doing our sadhana with an attempt to have an internal change. Then grade 3 are the one who externally have the garb of devotees, but they don't have any internal change at all. They continue with their thing. But the 4th class of people here, which are, they are using the garb of devotee to continue their old sinful activities, for their sense gratification. So taking the advantage of that garb. And such people, their knowledge, has no value, and their minds are always impure. Prabhupada gives an example in the purport where he states that a sincere sweeper on the street is far better than the pretend meditator who meditates, for the sake of his living. Yeah. So moving on overall till now, just summarizing. So we spoke about 3.4, premature renunciation, where Krishna condemns this. Non-performing your duties as well as sannyasa without purification of heart is condemned. Then 3.5, we spoke about inaction. So action is natural to us. And then about 3.6 about pretender, as how they externally they have the garb, but internally their mind dwells on the sense objects.
Thanks, Nikita. So does anyone has any question on this or need any clarification? So basically, Krishna was just trying to say that renunciation alone cannot help you. Arjun, if you go to the forest and you go for begging alms, and if someone rejects, someone refuses, then you will take out your sword and kill the person. You are a Kshatriya. So don't, act whimsically. First, purify your heart, right? Which is a prerequisite to take renunciation. And please try to understand that any action like Nishkam Karma is actually going to help you become purified, right? And thereafter, if required, then you talk about renunciation. But whimsically taking renunciation is not going to help you, and any type of inaction is impossible. Not only that inaction is impossible, but action is required to purify your heart, right? So that was very important for us, with Nikita ji very nicely explained us, right? And how Krishna uses a strong word, mithyachar, right? Don't become a mithyachari, right? So that was very important. So now moving on to 3.7, will someone like to read this verse?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Thanks, Prashad ji.
Hare Krishna. Yastri indriyani manasa niyamya rabade arjuna karmendriya karma yogam asakta sa visisyate.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you, Prashad ji. So someone will read the translation.
Yeah, I can read it over that also.
Hmm.
On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior.
Right. So Krishna is contrasting, you know, what he said in the previous verses about whimsically taking renunciation, right? Krishna, please don't take these verses that Krishna is saying that no one should renounce. What Krishna is saying, a person should not renounce whimsically without the purification of heart. If person does that, then they become burden on the society. It's not that, a renunciation should not be taken. Renunciation is a ashram and it is required, right, for preaching purposes. So that is important. So Krishna here is saying that don't take renunciation whimsically, but instead what you do is you act. So he's contrasting that a person, if instead of taking renunciation, if a person acts sincerely, how does he act sincerely? By controlling his senses with the help of what? The help of mind, right? We saw that if these are the senses, this is the mind, right? So the mind actually sometimes is known as sixth sense, and this, mind is supposed to control the senses. So we saw that hierarchy that, intelligence controls the mind and the mind controls the senses. Does anyone remember the example we discussed? We discussed an example of chariot. If you remember, the horses were five senses, right? And the rein with which the chariot driver controlled the horses is mind, and the chariot driver is the intelligence, right? So through intelligence, you control the mind, and the mind helps to control the senses. So Krishna says, instead of taking whimsical renunciation or becoming a pretender, it's better to do work. Continue to do your responsibilities, continue to do your job, your work, your duties. How is what Krishna explains in this verse, that you should keep your senses in control, right? With the help of a controlled mind, and begin karma yoga without attachment. And by doing so, he's then saying that you will be far superior to that false renunciate, right? So here there is a word used as karmendriya, right? Now there are two types of indriya, karmendriya and gyanendriya, so which we will explain in the next slide, right? So if we move on, yeah. So karmendriya versus gyanendriya, right? Now what are karmendriyas? Karmendriyas are our hand, leg, our speech. They are karmendriyas. Gyanendriyas, like our receptive senses, basically, right? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin, with the help of which we will acquire knowledge, acquire information. They are known as gyanendriya. So when we acquire information, then we use our karmendriyas to act, right? So now people, if they are practicing passive meditation, right, like they are just sitting without doing any activity, by sometimes closing their eyes, right, not speaking and all, they are known as passive meditators. By doing so, please understand, it's not that their knowledge acquiring senses, their gyanendriyas are inactive, which Krishna already said, it's not possible. It will never happen, right? He said that inactivity is unnatural, right? So that cannot happen, right? They are restrained, but they are not inactive. And if someone is doing a passive meditation, and what he's doing is within his mind, he's contemplating on sense objects, then his consciousness will get contaminated, right? And what will that contaminated consciousness do? That will ultimately push him to act using the karmendriya. And the example, the photograph we have shown is of samosas. Someone who will be, who is trying to control the senses, without engaging them in higher taste. You remember we discussed in second chapter, param drishtva nivartate, right? How should we control senses? By engaging them in higher taste, right? If you remember. So Asthit Pragya is someone, who knows, like a tortoise, where to use the senses, right? We also discussed that how outside the temple, the tortoise is carved. That means that within the premises of temple, you can freely use your senses, right? So transcendentalist is actually requested, or is Krishna is basically asking a transcendentalist to act. Why? Because activity in Krishna consciousness will help a transcendentalist to purify the heart, which is a prerequisite for doing anything, right? So that is something which is very, very, very important for all of us to understand, right? So if a person whose consciousness within the mind is contaminated, what he will do? Then he will not be able to control the senses. His karmendriyas will act, and they will go and grab, for example, any sense object, whatever it is. It can be related to the eyes or ears or taste, whatever it is, touch. So what we have to instead do is to engage them in positive things. And what were the external spiritual engagement? If you remember, we discussed about those in second chapter, right? Like singing kirtans, hearing classes, right? With eyes, having darshan of deities, meeting with devotees, right? Taking Krishna Prasad. So these are like positive spiritual external engagement. Param drishtva nivartate, where Krishna is saying, use this thing, in positive, and which is where you will be able to purify your mind, your intelligence, right? And we saw how in 2.66, Krishna, said that, Nasti buddhir ayuktasya, na chayuktasya bhavana, na cha bhavyata shantir ashantasya kutha sukham. That until and unless you engage your intelligence and mind in spiritual activities, right? It will be difficult for us to be in peace. And Nikita, can you mute the lines of people who are not speaking? Right. So yeah, so those engagements, those spiritual engagement.
You are muted, Sumit.
So there's something wrong with my laptop, so I've requested Nikita to host it. So am I audible now? Right.
Yeah.
So okay. So what did I speak? I was talking about the 2.66, right? Where Krishna said that you have to focus on me, which will help to have your transcendental intelligence, right? And a stable mind, without which you can never have peace and happiness, right? Ashantasya kutha sukham. What to talk about happiness without peace? And you can never be in peace unless you engage in Krishna conscious activity, right? So that was important for us to understand difference. Basically, difference between karmendriya, gyanendriya, what Krishna is talking about. Any question on this?
Subhaji, just to maybe just to clear my understanding. So basically, what Lord Krishna says is that if even whenever we're doing our prescribed duties, obviously our working senses and the knowledge acquiring senses will be involved. Okay? So can't escape that. But if we are doing our prescribed duties, whatever comes in our day-to-day lives, if we are doing it and with Krishna in our mind, that way I think the senses will be under control and will not be affected by what is getting received while doing the prescribed duties.
Very, very good question.
Right? Yeah.
So, see, we will discuss it in a detail, more descriptive in next session. But let me tell you that when we talk about doing our prescribed duties for Krishna, right? What does that basically mean, and how, how can we control? How our senses will be controlled by that, right? So, let's discuss it in little detail while we'll talk more about it in next section. So let's take example of our most difficult sense organ, which is tongue. It is said that if we are able to control the tongue, then it will be easier for us to control other sense organs. Tongue is the most difficult one. Now, what do we do with the tongue? Our tongue wants to taste anything and everything. Whatever we see, we want to just grab it and eat it. There was one of my colleague, who joined my organization, and I was meeting him. And, as you know, we just don't eat anywhere and everywhere, right? So we have a restaurant which is run by a devotee. So I invited him there. And so I told him about my limitation, right? That we follow some regulative principles and this. And he said, Sumit, anything moving or not moving on earth, I can eat it, right? So there are people like that, right? They, will just grab anything and everything. Now, what does a devotee does in that circumstance? How a devotee here is supposed to act, and how will he control this sense? So Krishna says in 3.13, Yagna Shista Shina Santo Muchante Sarva Kilvisha Bhunjate Te To Agham Papa Ye Pachyanti Atma Karanat. That if you eat anything without offering to me, then it is a sin. But if you eat after offering to me, then it will help, that prasad will help to nullify all your sins, not only of this life, but also past lives. Now, what happens when we start offering food to Krishna? First thing is, we will only eat vegetarian. Prabhupada used to often say that even monkeys are vegetarian. So you should not be proud to be a vegetarian. We have to be prasaditarian. We will only take prasad. So yes, first, vegetarian is a sanctioned food, right? In even vegetarian, we don't take onion and garlic, right? Mushroom and things like that. So we don't. So we will only cook vegetarian food, and that is offered to Krishna first. Now, when we are offering it to Krishna, we are offering it with love. And that we will see more in ninth chapter. It's, I think so 9.24 or 23, right? Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. So Krishna specifically says what can be offered to me and how? With love. Now, when we offer it with love, what does Krishna do? Krishna exchanges our love with his mercy. And that is why the bhoga becomes prasad. Prasad basically means mercy, right? So if we eat that prasad, that helps us to control our tongue. Because that is Krishna's mercy. Krishna is giving his mercy, right? So which basically, and I tell you, if you might have already started, or if you started soon, you will see it by yourself. And Prabhupada explains it, that how that one activity will help you in your spiritual life, right? Now, let's take any other example. For example, what example do you want to take, Dipesh? What is the another sense organ which looks difficult?
Maybe our feelings, right? Like we go through the whole day with different feelings. We get angry with our colleagues, with the people whom we interact in a day, and we get angry. And sometimes we get angry because we feel things have not happened in the way what we thought. So
Very
do
good.
you
I
think?
understood.
Yeah.
I understood. Thank you. So that is basically beyond the senses. Now that is a game of mind and intelligence, right? So does anyone remember verse number 2.47? Will anyone like to recite that verse 2.47 that we learned?
I'll recite.
Mm-hmm.
कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्म फला हेतुर्भुर् मा ते संगोस्त्व अकर्मणि.
Right. Read the translation.
You have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty.
Dipesh, just this one verse. Just this one verse. If we try to understand it and try to imply it, you know what it is saying? That you have the right to perform your prescribed activity, but you don't have the right on the result. First thing, our activity will not be result oriented. Second thing, that never consider yourself to be the cause of the result, right? Now, when do we become anxious or when do we become depressed? When we think we are either not getting what we were expecting, one of our team member is not performing, right? Or we did our best, but then also the client was shouting on us, or they came with an unrealistic expectation, right? Or sometimes we are too elated, very happy. Oh, I did this. I am the doer, I can do it, And Krishna says, never consider yourself the cause of the result, right? So first thing is, you will be a balanced person in your approach, right? You will never be depressed or anxious or too elated about anything. And then the fourth thing Krishna says, never. Now, having read the first three things, you have the right to perform activity, but you have no right for the result, and you are not then you will become lazy. You'll think, okay, Krishna says, never be lazy. Akarmani, right? Never think that you should not be active. So if we work in that consciousness, and thereafter Krishna will explain that how we are not the doer. We are not the doer in a sense, we are not the only doer. There are modes of nature, the Krishna is there, there are other activities involved. Right? If we try to internalize these verses and try to gradually practice how should we internalize this? There is a formula. How, when we are going to office, how can we remain in a spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness? So that process starts before that. That process starts basically from 4 a.m. 4 a.m. is the time when you will get up from your bed, or 4:30 a.m. or 5 a.m. Then, you clean your body, right? And then you start chanting, right? You chant for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, how many number of rounds you are chanting. And you are chanting in a prayerful mood. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, right? Then you do some worship, right? Offer incense and diya to Krishna, Radha Krishna. You do some Tulsi Puja, right? And then you offer bhoga to Krishna, or your wife will do. And then you take prasad. Maybe in morning, if you don't have time, maybe 5 minutes, try to hear something. You know what I do? I tell you practically. I may be as busy as you people are in your own professional lives. When I'm in washroom, my lecture goes on, as until I goes in the washroom, and until I am not fully dressed that I'm going to do deity worship. Even deity worship, the lecture goes on, right? Until I start my chanting. So it goes for half an hour, right? And while I'm doing other activities, my mind and intelligence is focused on what is going on in the lecture, right? And when I'm taking prasad also, I try to play some lecture, right? So this all activities, Prabhupada said, if you follow this routine, till that, from the time you get up till 9 a.m., like if you can follow this routine, then this early morning sadhana will help you to keep Krishna consciousness throughout the entire day. There will be incidences and episodes of, not being able to control, but you will be reminded by yourself, oh yeah, I missed it, but next time I will try. Like a child who is trying to walk, the child will fall down, but mother will say, get up. Mother will say, come, I'm standing here. The child will try to hold on to the mother, right? The child will sit. Mother will not say, yeah, you cannot run, you cannot walk, you cannot do anything. No, Krishna is never going to say that. Krishna is always going to stand up. You will fall. You will get angry. You will do nonsense things. But before you were doing that, you were not knowing that these were nonsense. Now you know. That is a huge difference. Huge difference. Right? And gradually you see how these spiritual activities will really help you to become 24/7 Krishna conscious. Practically. My only request is, don't get discouraged. Be persistent. And Krishna is waiting for all of us. Like the mother is waiting across, to embrace the child. Krishna is waiting for us. And Krishna is supporting us. You will see in subsequent verses and chapters how Krishna will say, how he's so dear, like how he goes, like what we say, above and beyond his limits for his devotees, specifically for his devotees, right? So, does that answer your question, Dipesh, a little bit?
Yes, definitely.
Right? Yeah. So, okay. So, any other question or comment? Okay, so we move on to the next slide. Right. So yeah. So now this is an example of 3.7, where Krishna is saying, you do your activity, but with controlled senses, right? And here there is a photograph of Lord Krishna's billionaire servant. And can anyone tell me who that person is? The name is written there. Alfred Ford, right? Alfred Ford is a great grandson of Henry Ford, right? Now, Henry Ford, everyone knows. And this person is, a billionaire, very rich. But he's a Krishna devotee. He's a Prabhupada disciple. And now you see him in, other garbs of he's wearing dhoti kurta. He has a chanting bead around his neck. And, his wife is there in sari. And then you see he meeting the West Bengal chief minister. He has donated a significant amount, like almost 400 crores, to come up with a huge temple at the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is Sridham Mayapur in West Bengal, right? So there are examples of n number of devotees who are sincere, who are engaged in prescribed duties, and they are working for satisfaction of Krishna, right? So, and I tell you, when you take small baby steps, you will see it for yourself. Because I tell you, I can explain you how the rasgulla or gulab jamun taste, but until and unless you pick and eat it, it is then you will realize what it is, right? And I know that, all of you now might already be feeling, some change, some positivity, right? Some spirituality in your lives, which is making you happy, peaceful, content, and looking forward to more and more, right? So that is what Krishna is saying in this verse. So we'll move on to the next verse. So who will like to read this?
I can read.
Right.
Perform your prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work.
Right. So here Krishna is saying, perform your prescribed duty, right? You engage yourself in your prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. Krishna is never advocating inactivity. Krishna is saying you will have to perform your prescribed duty, right? And Krishna clearly said that just by taking renunciation does not mean you will attain liberation. First, purify yourself. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. So what to talk about other things, right? So we have to be active, right? So here again, basically, Krishna is saying that don't become a pretender. Rather than, you are a Kshatriya, you perform your prescribed duty, right? And work should not be given up whimsically without purification of materialistic propensities. Very, very important, right? We have to purify our heart. Because what happens, I tell you, there sometimes this vairagya come within us also. When we try to read this Bhagavad Gita and start a spiritual life, first is people around you will be afraid. Arey Baba, at this age, why they have started reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam? What are they doing? They will be spoiling their lives and they will become Babaji and all. Right? Before you even become Babaji, they will make you Babaji. They will be afraid. Oh, they are going in wrong direction. I tell you, I had a friend, who started taking this Krishna consciousness, and he started, putting tilak and doing arti and chanting and all, and his parents became really worried about what he's going in a wrong direction. No, this is not the age and all. So he made him stop doing all this. And thereafter he was smoking, drinking, and then parents are very happy. No problem at all, So that is the Kali Yuga, that is. Whereas Prahlad Maharaj says that from the age of 5 years, we should be engaged in spiritual life. And also we will see in next session 3.10 what Krishna says. Why did he created everything? So we'll see. But it is very important for us also that because when we start reading all these things, a type of renunciation, a feeling of renunciation comes within us, that, oh, family is not very important. It is Krishna only which is important. And, I am not getting now any taste in my work. And, this and that, that immature feelings, or sometimes, these ideas starts coming in our mind. So we have to try to understand Bhagavad Gita. Please try to understand that this is not an emotional, sentimental thing. It is, Bhagavad Gita is very practical, which is why, in Oxford University, people like Einstein, Newton, many bureaucrats, politicians, they are reading, not only Indians, right? So we don't have to be, whimsical. We have to have very practical approach, right? So which is what Krishna is telling again and again. Krishna is chastising Arjuna. Don't talk nonsense. That is what he's saying, right? Go ahead and do your duty. So moving on to the next slide. This is our favorite verse today's, which you all have learned. So will anyone like to recite this?
I am recite. यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र लोकोऽयं कर्म बन्धनः तद् अर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गसमाचर.
Yeah, read the translation.
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and that you will always remain free from bondage.
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Now, where has this sacrifice come from? What does yajna means? What do we do in the yajna? See, yajna has a form and has a principle, right? So, like yoga, like when we do yoga, we have different asanas. So that is a form. But what is the principle of yoga? Santosh Prabhu, what is the principle of yoga? What is the aim of yoga? To connect, right? To connect with the super soul, with the supreme personal.
Yeah, to understand the truth and
right? So there is a form and there is a principle. Yajna, yagyart karmano anyatra. Do your duty for as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu. So what is yajna? Yajna, what we understand yajna for now as a form of yajna is a fire sacrifice, right? And what is the principle of that? Yajna kund. The whole, when we give ahutis, right?
Connecting with God.
Right. So connecting with God by sacrificing, we put ghee there, we put fruits and grains and, sweets, right? Why? Because we consider yajna as, yajna kunda as mouth of Vishnu and yajna fire as tongue of Vishnu, right? So there is a process, right? How to, so it is not again whimsically. Nothing in Shastras is whimsical. It is very organized, very process driven. More process driven, our processes have gaps and they need to be revised. But here in this process, it is transcendental. There is no gap, right? So for us to understand that the principle of yajna is sacrifice. And for whom the sacrifice has to be done? The sacrifice has to be done for Vishnu. Sacrifice for Vishnu is known as yajna, right? So if, for example, Nikita ji, if we move on to the next slide, right? So yeah, you can, sure, go ahead. Yeah. So if you see, back. So here if you see, what are we? I'm not able to see anything.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, now I can see. So can someone read it?
I'll read it. Offering prescribed duties, dharma, to Lord Vishnu or Krishna without personal desire is called yagna or sacrifice.
Right. Now, of doing prescribed duty is a dharma, right? It is mentioned in Vedas. But doing that dharma for Krishna becomes yagya, sacrifice. We have to understand. See, these are some things, concepts which we have to understand. That yagya is something like, again, that is not whimsical and doing anything for Krishna. Like people cannot offer meat to Krishna, right? That is adharma, that is not prescribed. So something prescribed by the Vedas offering to Krishna becomes yagya, that is sacrifice, right? We are sacrificing. And Vedas, they say that yagya vai Vishnu. In other words, the purpose served by performing yagya is as good as serving Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha or Lord Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. It is just the same. That means offering food to Krishna, trying to understand Krishna by reading Bhagavad Gita, trying to understand Bhagavad Gita by using our intelligence, chanting, all these things are yogic performances. They are sacrifices. And we saw already, krate yadhyayato vishnum tretayam yajato makhe dwapare paricharyayam tad kalo tadhari kirtanat. That for Kali Yuga, what is the sacrifice? It is kalo tadhari kirtanat, chanting of the holy names of Krishna, right? So we have to do work for his satisfaction. Any other work we do will cause bondage. Whatever it is, whether it is good or bad, we have to face the reaction. On the other hand, if we do our work, our prescribed duties, it will lead to purification of heart. And when our heart is purified, then the knowledge will awaken. Then it will be fit to accept the knowledge. So that is the whole process. And if we work for Krishna, that is definitely not with a desire. That will be just for pleasing Krishna, right? That is very important. So it is said, Krishna thus suggested that working for the Lord without desire for result is karma yoga, is better for Arjuna. But if you are not free from desire for the results of action, then also you perform your work with desire, that is karma kanda, rather than giving it up completely. So Krishna is saying, better than giving up the work, you at least, even if you are attached, right, you still continue to do your work. Why? Because your prescribed duties, if you are doing even with attachment, that will lead you to purification gradually, but it will lead you, right? Because you are following Vedas. And ultimately, it will help you to become a Nishkam Karma Yogi, right? So this is the concept, and we will talk elaborately about Yagya and the whole what is more applicable. Krishna will further explain the cycle of sacrifice, right, in subsequent verses, and how we should be doing it, how we should be performing our activities. So in next session, we will basically take you to each and every detail, what we should be doing, how we should be doing, right? So we move on to the next slide, which is basically a summary of 7th, 8th, and 9th verse, that a sincere person, a sincere devotee is better than someone who is whimsically renouncing. We should perform our prescribed duty, and we should perform prescribed duty for Vishnu, for Krishna, for his satisfaction, right? And then moving on to the next slide, it's basically a summary that liberation or bondage is not determined by one's activity that we have discussed. I will give you an example to remind you that someone is shooting. So shooting is an activity. But if someone is shooting on the border of a country for the country, right? Then that shooting is for the country, right? Then that shooting will get him reward. But if there is other person who is shooting whimsically his neighbor or someone, fighting and doing all this, so that is an impious activity, sinful activity, right? So he will be punished. So the activity in itself is not important, but the consciousness, the reason why you are performing, right? That is more important. So liberation or bondage is determined by one's activity. So Dipesh ji might be working in a company like 3 years back, 5 years back, but moving forward, he will work. So that is a totally Dipesh ji. Although he's working in the same company, he's doing the same activity, but he will be in a totally different consciousness. So that is what Krishna is actually trying to say. And renunciation is not actually giving up action, but giving up attachment to the result of the activity. That is renunciation. It is not about changing your outward dress, your external clothings. It is about purifying your consciousness. Renunciation of activities without necessary knowledge and purification will lead to destruction on the path of spiritual advancement. And Krishna is saying, don't become a pretender, don't become a burden on society, right? Please, it is better for you to do your prescribed duty rather than, trying to engage in someone else's activity. So that brings us to the end of today's session. I want to open the floor for any further questions or comments or any suggestion if you have. Okay. So if no question, no comment, then we will stop the maybe recording and we will now chant the Hare Krishna mantra 5 times. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar